when your dog ships you harder than your best friend. Okay. So I knew my German Shepherd, Captain, was a little too smart for his own good, but I never expected him to launch a full-blown matchmaking mission against my will. 1 minute, I'm living my peaceful, single life, and the next, my dog is stealing mail, breaking into my neighbor's yard, and literally throwing me into the arms of Dr. Ethan Parker, the ridiculously good-looking guy next door. Coincidence? I think not, but trust me, this love story didn't happen smoothly. There were embarrassing disasters, coffee catastrophes, and one particularly unfortunate pasta incident. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Captain pulled his biggest stunt yet. Was my dog really trying to sabotage me? Or was this all part of a much bigger plan? Stay tuned, because the story is wild. Before we continue, please like and subscribe. Romance, and I have never exactly been on speaking terms. This isn't me being dramatic, it's science. Documented 3 years of disastrous dating experiences, and confirmed by my best friend Maya's color-coded spreadsheet tracking every failed attempt at love. Yes, an actual spreadsheet. She calls it research. I call it emotional terrorism. But you know who is good at romance? My German Shepherd, Captain. And by good, I mean alarmingly skilled. Lately though, I'm beginning to suspect he's not a sweet little Cupid, but more of a chaos gremlin with an agenda I can't quite figure out. It all started 3 months ago, when Dr. Ethan Parker moved in next door. Yes, that Dr. Parker, the brilliant pediatric surgeon who volunteers at animal shelters and probably spends his free time rescuing kittens from trees and inspiring romance novel covers. Our first meeting wasn't exactly a normal neighborly introduction. 1 second, Captain was lounging in the living room like a perfectly content dog, and the next, he was gone, bolting out the barely cracked front door, like he had just been cast in an action movie, leash trailing behind him like some kind of victory banner. By the time I found him, he was flat on his back in Ethan Parker's backyard, getting the belly rub of his life. My supposedly loyal companion looked up at me like, "Oh, hey, didn't see you there. I live here now." And then there was Ethan, tousled dark hair, unfairly green eyes, standing there in scrubs that somehow made him look like he belonged on a medical drama poster. He glanced up from Captain, flashing an easy, devastating grin. "I believe this little escape artist belongs to you?" His voice was warm, his tone amused, and oh my God, why did his eyes have to be that green? I should have said something normal, something that didn't immediately tank my dignity. Instead, what came out was he's usually more loyal, but I guess he has good taste in neighbors. Kill me, bury me in this very backyard, maybe under that perfectly manicured hedge. But Ethan just laughed. And because the universe delights in my personal suffering, Captain chose that exact moment to leap up, winding his leash around our legs like a scene straight out of a slapstick comedy. Cue physics. 1 second, I was standing. The next, I was falling, right into Ethan Parker's arms. He caught me with the effortless reflexes of someone who probably never trips over their own feet or spills coffee on themselves, which, frankly, made him even more suspicious. "I usually ask someone to dinner before we get this close," he teased, steadying me. I scrambled to untangle myself, my face burning hotter than a Phoenix sidewalk in July. "I'm Sophie Chen, and this traitor is Captain, who is now officially banned from all premium treats." Captain, completely unbothered, just wagged his tail like he hadn't just ruined my life. At that moment, I assumed this was nothing more than a slightly embarrassing, mildly humiliating meet cute, a funny story I'd tell at parties while aggressively downplaying how attractive my new neighbor was. But Captain? Oh no, he had plans. Over the next few weeks, my dog made it his mission to escape at the exact moments Ethan was outside. Coincidence? Not a chance. He stole Ethan's mail, his garden gloves, once, even his stethoscope. I still have no idea how he got into Ethan's car. I don't even want to know. Every retrieval mission ended in yet another humiliation for me, like the great sprinkler incident, where I ended up completely soaked. And of course, I was wearing white, because the universe is petty. Or the coffee catastrophe, where I literally ran into Ethan at the cafe and dumped an entire extra hot latte down the front of his pristine white coat. Do surgeons even own non-white clothing? And let's not forget the yoga mat fiasco, where Captain dragged Ethan's exercise mat into my yard, right in the middle of me attempting to film a workout video for my fitness blog. 1 second, I was mid-plank. The next, face planting in the grass with a front row audience of one very amused doctor. Maya, naturally, found this hysterical. "Your dog is literally playing Cupid." She cackled over wine one night, and doing a better job at it than you ever have. "My dog is not playing Cupid. I argued, even as Captain sat in the corner, looking suspiciously smug. He's just socially confused. Maya raised a knowing eyebrow. Is that why he's been sneaking over there even more than you realize? I froze, wine glass halfway to my mouth. What do you mean? Maya just smiled like she knew something I didn't and casually changed the subject. I should have been suspicious. I should have asked more questions. Because little did I know, Captain was just getting started. And his grand plan? Let's just say it involved even more accidental encounters, one very important ring, and a secret that would flip my entire world upside down. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let me tell you about the night my traitorous dog locked me in Ethan Parker's house overnight. Because subtlety? Yeah. Apparently that's not in Captain's vocabulary. Chapter 2. The escalation of dog-fueled chaos. Look, I'm not usually the type of person who resorts to extreme measures, but after Captain's sixth successful escape attempt in 2 weeks, I decided desperate times called for desperate solutions. I bought every dog containment device known to mankind, a GPS tracker collar, a virtually indestructible leash, false advertising, by the way, and even one of those fancy camera systems that lets you monitor your pet remotely. Want to know how long it took Captain to outsmart all of them? 47 minutes. I don't understand, I muttered, watching the live feed as my supposedly average intelligence German Shepherd methodically disconnected the camera by pulling out its power cord with his teeth. When did you become Ocean's 11? Maya lounged on my couch, not even trying to hide her amusement. Maybe he's getting private tutoring from the neighbor. Dr. Perfect Parker does not have time to teach my dog criminal behaviors, I said, then immediately regretted giving him a nickname, because Maya's eyes lit up like Christmas had come early. Dr. Perfect Parker? Is that what we're calling him now? We're not calling him anything, I insisted, but my face was already doing that annoying thing where it turns the color of a fire truck. And anyway, he's probably too busy with his date tonight too. I stopped abruptly, realizing my mistake. Maya sat up straight. Date? How do you know about his date? Because Captain stole his phone yesterday, and somehow managed to text me his entire schedule for the week. I buried my face in my hands. I had to return it this morning. And Ethan was all smiles about it, like having your property repeatedly stolen by your neighbor's dog is completely normal. And did he happen to mention this date? He said, and I quote, "Since you have my schedule anyway, maybe you can help me pick a restaurant for Friday? I'm meeting someone special." The words tasted bitter in my mouth, which was ridiculous, because I absolutely did not care about Ethan Parker's love life. Someone special, Maya repeated slowly, giving me a look that I chose to ignore. The point is, I said firmly, I need to get Captain under control before he ruins another one of Ethan's dates, like he did last week, when he crashed Ethan's coffee meetup by stealing the woman's scarf and leading us on a chase through 3 blocks of downtown. But Captain, it seemed, had other plans. That evening, I was just settling in for a night of definitely not wallowing with takeout and Netflix when I heard it. The distinctive sound of my dog's bark, followed by a crash, and a woman's shriek from next door. No, 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 I muttered, running to my window. Through Ethan's dining room windows, I could see Captain, who was supposed to be locked in his deluxe, escape-proof crate, standing triumphantly on Ethan's perfectly set dinner table. Across from him sat a stunning woman in a red dress, who was currently watching in horror as red wine spread across her pristine white tablecloth. I don't remember running over there. 1 minute I was at my window, the next I was bursting through Ethan's back door, which he'd started leaving unlocked for exactly these types of emergencies. Captain down, I commanded, lunging for him, but in my panic, I didn't notice the fallen wine bottle. My foot hit it, sending me sliding across the hardwood floor like some sort of uncoordinated Olympic skater. I grabbed for the nearest support, which happened to be the tablecloth. You can probably guess what happened next. The entire table's contents went flying. The woman in red, who I later learned was Victoria, a neurosurgeon, ended up wearing not just wine, but also pasta arrabbiata, garlic bread, and what looked like very expensive tiramisu. The only one who seemed pleased with this development was Captain, who sat in the midst of the chaos with what I swear was a satisfied grin. Victoria stood up slowly, pasta sauce dripping from her designer dress. "This," she said icily, "is absolutely ridiculous. Ethan, you cannot possibly think this is normal behavior." "I can explain," I started, but she cut me off. "First, your dog interrupts our coffee date last week. Then he somehow gets into my car and steals my phone. And now this." She turned to Ethan. "Are you sure this isn't being done on purpose?" I froze. "Excuse me?" Ethan, who had been surprisingly quiet until now, looked between us with an unreadable expression. Victoria, I'm sure it's not. Oh please, she scoffed. It's obvious what's going on here. Your neighbor has a crush on you, and she's using her dog to sabotage your dates. The room went so quiet you could hear Captain's tail thumping against the floor. My face felt like it was on fire. That's completely, I would never, I sputtered, but Victoria was already gathering her things. Call me when you've sorted out your situation, she said to Ethan, then stormed out, leaving a trail of pasta sauce footprints in her wake. In the deafening silence that followed, I became acutely aware that I was still sitting on Ethan's floor, covered in various Italian foods, while my dog looked on with what appeared to be immense satisfaction. Sophie, Ethan said slowly, and something in his voice made me look up. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Part amusement, part suspicion, and part something else that made my stomach do flip-flops. Are you sure you didn't do that on purpose? What? Of course not. I would never. I stopped, noticing something strange. Was he trying not to smile? Before I could process this, Captain dropped something in my lap. A slightly wine-stained envelope that looked old and well-handled. Ethan's eyes widened, and he snatched it away before I could see what was written on it. That's, nothing, he said quickly, tucking it into his back pocket. Just some old mail. But I'd seen enough to notice two things. One, it was addressed in handwriting I found oddly familiar, and two, Ethan's ears had turned pink, something I'd never seen before. As I left that night, after helping clean up and apologizing approximately 8,000 times, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. Something about that envelope, about Ethan's reaction, about the way Captain seemed to be orchestrating these accidents with almost suspicious precision. But I had bigger problems to worry about, like the fact that Maya was absolutely never going to let me live this down, or that I now owed Victoria approximately $1 million in dry cleaning bills, or that every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing that almost smile on Ethan's face when he asked if I'd done it on purpose. And why, exactly, did that make my heart beat faster than any of Captain's chaos ever had? Chapter 3. The ultimate sabotage and accidental confession. There are three things I'm absolutely certain of: death, taxes, and the fact that my dog is trying to ruin my life. He's going on another date, I told Maya, pacing my living room, while Captain watched with suspicious innocence from his bed. A serious date. Those were his exact words when he told me this morning. And how exactly did that conversation come up? Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. I stopped pacing, because Captain stole his tie while he was getting ready for work, and I had to return it. And Ethan just happened to mention that he needed it for tonight, because he's going on a serious date with someone special. And could I please keep Captain inside this time, because it's really important. And breathe, Sophie. I collapsed onto the couch. I'm breathing. I'm totally breathing. I'm also going to become a hermit. Maybe move to Alaska. Do they have dogs in Alaska? Never mind. Don't answer that. Maya studied me for a long moment. You know, for someone who claims not to care about Ethan's love life, you seem pretty invested in the state. I'm not invested. I'm just concerned, professionally, as a neighbor, about property damage. Hella. Maya glanced at Captain. And what does the criminal mastermind think about all this? As if on cue, Captain's ears perked up. He trotted to the window and let out a single bark. No, I said firmly. Whatever you're planning. Absolutely not. This is important to Ethan. He said so himself. No sabotage, no theft, no chaos. Just a nice, normal evening where he can go on his date. And I broke off as Captain suddenly bolted for the door, which I had forgotten to lock. Because of course I had. Captain, wait. But he was already gone. And through my window, I could see Ethan getting into his car. Could see Captain making a beeline for him. Could see, oh no, could see my dog snatching Ethan's car keys right out of his hand and taking off down the street. What followed was possibly the most ridiculous chase scene in the history of suburban America. Ethan sprinting after Captain, me sprinting after Ethan, Maya following in her car, shouting unhelpful commentary through her open window, and Captain leading us all on a merry chase that somehow impossibly ended right back at my front door. Captain, Ethan called, slightly out of breath. Drop the keys. Captain wagged his tail and backed up against my door. I am so sorry, I began. But then Captain did something even worse than stealing the keys. He dropped them right through the mail slot in my door. The mail slot that only opened from the inside. The door that I had, in my panic, pulled shut behind me, without my keys. Whoa, no, I whispered. Let me guess, Ethan said, and I could hear the resignation in his voice. You're locked out? I'm locked out, and my keys are inside. Your keys are inside. And I'm going to be late for my date. Something in me snapped. Well, I'm sorry my dog ruined your perfect evening with your perfect date for your perfect life. Maybe if you weren't so impossibly perfect all the time. With your stupid perfect hair and your stupid perfect job and your stupid perfect everything, Captain wouldn't feel the need to. I slapped my hand over my mouth, but it was too late. The words were out there, hanging in the air between us like unexploded ordnance. Ethan stared at me. Sophie, don't. I held up a hand, my face burning. Just don't. Let's just call a locksmith and pretend I never said any of that. Why do you look so upset? Because I like you. The words burst out before I could stop them. Because I've liked you since the first day Captain dragged me into your yard. And I've been trying so hard not to because you're clearly interested in someone else. And my dog keeps making everything worse. And now I've just humiliated myself completely. And I never got to finish that sentence. Because suddenly Ethan was right there. And his hands were cupping my face. And he was looking at me with an expression that made my heart stop. Your dog, he said softly, has been trying to tell you something for months. Are you finally listening? And then he kissed me. It was the kind of kiss that makes you understand why people write songs about kissing. The kind that makes your toes curl, and your heart race, and your brain short-circuit until all you can think is oh and yes. And finally, when we broke apart, I was so dazed I almost missed the sound of my front door opening, almost missed Maya standing there with a spare key, and an enormous grin, almost missed Captain trotting out, looking supremely pleased with himself, and I definitely almost missed what he was carrying in his mouth. A small, velvet box. My heart stopped. Is that? Ethan's eyes widened. Oh God, no, I mean, yes, it's a ring. But it's not, it's my brother's. I've been keeping it for him. He's proposing to his girlfriend next week. Whoa. I wasn't sure if I felt relieved or disappointed, which was ridiculous, because we'd literally just had our first kiss 30 seconds ago. Although, Ethan added, pulling me close again, if things keep going the way they have been, I might need to get one of my own soon. From inside the house, Captain barked what sounded suspiciously like approval, and that's when I noticed something else. Clutched in Maya's hand was a familiar-looking envelope, the same one Ethan had snatched away that night of the dinner disaster, the one with the oddly familiar handwriting. Maya, I said slowly, where did you get that? She smiled, and something in her expression told me we were about to uncover yet another piece of this increasingly complicated puzzle. I think, she said, it's time you learned what your grandmother had to do with all of this. Chapter 4, The Twist and the Happy Ending. There are moments in life when everything you thought you knew turns upside down. Standing in my living room, watching Maya hold up that weathered envelope while Ethan's arm was still warm around my waist, I was having one of those moments. What does my grandmother have to do with any of this? I asked, though somewhere in the back of my mind, puzzle pieces were already clicking into place. The familiar handwriting on the envelope. Captain seemingly targeted chaos, the way Ethan sometimes looked at me like he was waiting for me to remember something. Maya handed me the envelope. Maybe you should read it yourself. With trembling fingers, I opened it and pulled out a letter dated 3 years ago. Dear Sophie, if you're reading this, then either I finally worked up the courage to give you this letter, unlikely, or Captain has decided to take matters into his own paws, much more likely. Yes, that's right. Captain isn't just your dog. He's our dog. Mine and Ethan's. I met Ethan 5 years ago when he was still a medical resident. He used to come to the shelter where I volunteered, and we bonded over this goofy German shepherd who kept escaping his kennel to follow Ethan around. Eventually, we decided to adopt him together. I would care for him during the day, and Ethan would take him on evening walks after his shifts. But Captain wasn't the only one who saw something special in Ethan. I watched him with the shelter animals, saw his kindness, his humor, the way he would spend his only free hour reading to the scared dogs. And I thought of you, my brilliant but workaholic granddaughter, who needed someone to remind her that life isn't just about deadlines and achievements. I planned to introduce you so many times, but something always came up. Then my health took a turn, and suddenly there wasn't enough time. But I made Ethan promise to look out for Captain, and I made Captain promise, as much as you can make a dog promise anything, to look out for both of you. I hope by the time you read this, you've already fallen in love with Ethan's kind heart, his terrible dad jokes, and the way he always seems to know exactly what someone needs. And I hope you've discovered that sometimes the best things in life come with a little chaos. All my love, Grandma Rose. P.S. If Captain has been causing trouble, don't blame him. He's just following orders. I looked up from the letter to find Ethan watching me with soft eyes. You knew my grandmother, I whispered. He nodded. She was one of the most amazing people I've ever met. She used to tell me stories about you all the time. Her brilliant granddaughter who worked too hard and laughed too little. She made me promise that when the time was right, I'd move into the house next door and let Captain work his magic. But that was 3 years ago. Why didn't you say anything when you first moved in? Ethan ran a hand through his hair sheepishly. I tried writing you that letter. He gestured to one that had fallen out of the envelope. The one he'd snatched away at the dinner disaster. Tried explaining everything, but it never seemed like the right time. And then Captain started his matchmaking campaign, and honestly, he grinned. It was too entertaining to stop. Entertaining? I sputtered. I dumped pasta all over your date. My fake date, he corrected. Victoria's actually my sister-in-law, the one my brother's proposing to next week. She agreed to help me make you jealous. I gaped at him. You. Unable to find the right words, I turned to Maya. And you knew about this? She held up her hands defensively. I only figured it out last month when I caught Captain sneaking into Ethan's house through the doggy door your grandmother had installed years ago. After that, well, she shrugged. It was better than any reality TV show. I sank onto the couch, trying to process everything. So all this time, Captain wasn't just escaping randomly. He was following your grandmother's last matchmaking attempt, Ethan finished, sitting beside me, with some creative improvisation of his own. Though I have to admit, the dinner disasters were all his idea. As if on cue, Captain trotted over and dropped something in my lap. A small photo album. Inside was a picture of my grandmother at the shelter, laughing as Captain licked her face. Next to her stood a younger Ethan, looking at them both with obvious affection. She was right, you know, Ethan said softly. About everything. About you needing someone to remind you to laugh. About me needing someone to share my terrible dad jokes with. About Captain being the world's worst, or maybe best, matchmaker. I looked at the photo, at the letter, at Maya's knowing smile, at Captain's proud expression. Then I looked at Ethan, seeing him properly for the first time. Not just as my infuriatingly perfect neighbor, but as someone who had known and loved my grandmother, who had been waiting for me all this time. I can't believe you let me think I was going crazy for months, I said. But I was smiling. To be fair, watching you fall into my pool trying to retrieve my supposedly stolen watch was pretty priceless. That watch incident was totally Captain's fault. Actually, Ethan said, pulling me closer. I might have left the watch where he could reach it, and the tie, and possibly several other items. You're as bad as the dog. Worse, he agreed cheerfully. I'm the one who taught him how to open the mail slot. I tried to look outraged, but it was hard when he was looking at me like that. Like I was everything my grandmother had told him about and more. You know, I said thoughtfully, we still haven't had a proper date that wasn't interrupted by canine chaos. Well, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 tickets. I happen to have reservations at that new rooftop restaurant downtown. The one that's definitely not dog-friendly. I raised an eyebrow. What about your serious date tonight? He grinned. I'd say this is pretty serious, wouldn't you? And as he kissed me again, I heard Maya quietly slipping out, taking Captain with her. But not before my matchmaking mastermind of a dog had dropped one more thing at our feet. A small velvet box that definitely wasn't Ethan's brother's. Captain, Ethan groaned, breaking the kiss. That was supposed to be for next month. I picked up the box with trembling fingers. Next month? His ears turned pink. That tell I'd come to love. Well, your grandmother did always say I should lock down a good thing when I found it. And I've technically been waiting 3 years. Looking at the simple, elegant ring inside. So similar to the style my grandmother used to wear. I couldn't help but laugh. You know what this means, right? What? Captain is definitely going to be our ring bearer. And somewhere, I'm sure my grandmother was laughing too, watching her final matchmaking scheme play out exactly as planned. Epilogue these days. Captain still escapes regularly, but now he just trots next door through his own doggy door, legally installed in our shared home. The old envelope sits framed on our mantle next to a photo from our wedding, where Captain did indeed serve as ring bearer, executing his duties with only minimal chaos. And every time I catch Ethan teaching our new puppy how to steal the neighbor's newspaper, I remember what my grandmother wrote. Sometimes the best things in life come with a little chaos, or in our case, a lot of chaos, a ridiculous amount of property theft, and one very smug German shepherd. But I wouldn't have it any other way. The end. Has your pet ever played matchmaker? Or just caused total chaos in your life? Tell me your funniest pet story. Comment down below.